Morning! Well, it might not be morning, it might be good morning, good afternoon, or good evening, depending on what time you're watching this. It's actually quite early right now. I'm waiting for the internet guy to come fix my modem, so it's 7 o'clock in the morning. If I fall asleep, I'm really sorry. What we're going to do today is actually make a ceramic paint palette and a little pot as well to put some water in. This is rock hard because it's really cold. Okay. Yeah, so sorry if I'm a bit sleepy right now. The internet guy's coming. They gave me a window from like 7 till 1, so here I am. I bet he doesn't get here till like 1:45. So what we're going to do, we're actually going to roll out just a small piece of clay. Normally I would use larger pieces of wood like this, but just so you can see what you can do at home, these are actually lollipop sticks and I've just taped 4 of those together. And this is just basically so that we can get our even thickness. You don't want to go too thin with this first piece because in order to get the little dips for the paint to go in our paint palette, we're going to carve into the surface of our slab. So you don't want to go too thin, otherwise you're going to end up, when you carve, you're going to dig a hole straight through the bottom of your clay, which you want to try and avoid. And again, if you get any air bubbles when you're rolling, you can pop those with the needle tool. What you need to remember as well with clay, because when it's drying you lose the moisture content from the clay, so you do get some shrinkage. So you just want to bear that in mind when you're making your piece. You're not going to get a huge amount, it's not going to massively change the size of your piece when it's something this big, but you're probably looking at about 12% shrinkage on this kind of clay. Okay, so I'm just making sure I'm getting rid of any air bubbles there that I can see. Okay, so I'm happy that this is a consistent thickness because I've used my little measuring lollipop sticks on the side. All I'm going to do, because I want this to look quite natural and cute, I'm going to actually just cut this just by looking at it. I'm not going to measure it with anything. Also, sometimes I'm kind of lazy and I forget to wipe off my tools from last night. So if you have any dry clay on your tool still, make sure you get that off so you get a nice clean cut. So all I'm going to do is cut this into a rectangle shape. Okay. And you can keep these side bits because we're going to make a little pinch pot vessel as well, just a little cup to go along with this so that you can dip your paintbrush in your water. Just as a cute little extra. As well, we can maybe do a little paintbrush holder. So now that I have my rectangle, like this, I'm just softening the corners a little bit. If you want to just go around and smooth over, and I'm just rounding off the corners a tiny little bit. This is just personal preference, just because I like the look of that. So I'm just pressing those in a little bit with my fingers. This clay isn't super wet. If you find that your slab here is really moist and kind of floppy and even touching it slightly is denting it, you might be better to just let it sit out for 10 minutes and just dry a little bit, and it'll just be a little bit easier to work with. Because when you're carving, which is how we're going to take out the little indentations for the paint, it's much easier when the clay is slightly more rigid. So I'm just going all the way around that. You can use a tiny bit of water on your finger and actually just smooth that over. So this is what we have so far. You can really use your imagination with this. You can do whatever kind of shapes you want. I'm going to have a larger rectangle just on this side and you can mark this out with a pencil as well, or the needle tool, whichever you feel most comfortable with. But I'm actually just very gently scoring where I want my indentations to be. I have just very roughly marked out where I'm going to carve out the sections where the indentations are going to be for me to mix my paint. And now what you need to do is, using the ribbon tool, this is also in the kits, so this is in the adult kit. There's 2 different ends to this. There's a curved end and there's a straight end. And all you need to do is, without going all the way through, you want to kind of go maybe no deeper than halfway through the clay. So checking out your thickness and just kind of eyeballing, you just want to go in and actually scoop out and start scooping the areas that you've marked out. The thing you just need to be really careful with when making this is that you're not going all the way through. Obviously, you're just going in enough to create little sections that have enough sidewall at the side of each section that it keeps your paint in that part of the tray. If you sort of press in, drag across, and don't quite go all the way to the other end, just lift out a little bit before you hit the other side of the shape that you've marked, and then come in from the other side. It just gives you a cleaner finish. It's not going to be completely smooth at this point either, but once I've carved out all of my little sections, I'm going to go back in and actually smooth it over with my finger and a little bit of water. So don't worry if it's not completely perfectly smooth when you're doing this carving out section, because we're going to go back in and smooth it over, so don't worry. But yeah, I saw some really cool ones on Pinterest. If your kid wants to do this and they maybe don't just want a boring rectangle one, like mine, you can find simple clip art or simple outlines on Google of different creatures, sea creatures, a shell. You could do a cool leaf pattern. There's all different things you could do. You could do like a slice of orange, like you cut through an orange, so it'd be cool to do a circular one and then just carve out the sections so it looks like the different segments of the orange inside. There's all different things you can do with regards to the design of this, but the process would be exactly the same. Just to show you what we've got so far, I've not quite finished, but all I'm doing is carving out the sections where I would put my paint in the palette, and we're just getting that nice indentation. So I've gone about halfway in. It gives us enough strength underneath where I've carved as well that I've not gone too far into the clay. Okay, so I'm pretty happy so far with how this is going. Now I've carved out my areas now. I'm happy with how deep those are. And all I'm going to do, just getting any extra little bits that I want to smooth over. It's quite rough still, so I just have my different areas carved out. And what you can do now is just using either a paintbrush that's not completely saturated in water. You don't want to completely saturate a paintbrush in water and then go in because it'll make it all goopy. But if you can either use your finger and just dip your finger in a little bit of water, that's just what I'm going to do. Or you can use a paintbrush and just go in with a damp finger and smooth over your areas. And it just gives you a much nicer finish. So I'm just literally just using my fingertip to smooth over the sections. I like it when handmade stuff has a bit of character and you can tell that it's been handmade. This is strangely satisfying, just having like... I'm stoked with that. So this is what I have. Okay, so this is our palette. So I'm just going to lay that at the side there. So all I'm going to do now is actually make a pinch pot, just a small pinch pot. There is another video on our channel that shows you how to make a pinch pot. Me and Rook made one, but I'll just show you real quick again. So I'm only going to make a little tiny cute one because that's all we need for something like this. I'm just taking a small ball of clay. This clay is kind of hard because it got quite cold in the studio last night, overnight, so if you need it and warm it up a little bit, it's just easier to manipulate, basically. All you need to do to make a little pinch pot, I've just made a small little ball out of clay, and all I'm going to do is push my thumb into the top, making a little donut, and I'm just adding a little bit of water to the sides because it's a little bit dry, this clay. All I'm doing is I've put my thumb in the top there, and then I'm just rotating it in my hand and just actually pinching the sides. It's called a pinch pot. So I'm literally just twisting the piece around in my hand and pinching the sides as I go. And I'm going to try and get, I'm not going to get this like super refined and thin. I want it to look quite rustic and cute. So it matches the thickness of what I've already made with the palette as well. So again, I'm just adding a little bit of water. If you see any cracks, you can just add some water to smooth over. Now again with these pots, you just want to try and get the thickness of the base and the thickness of the sides relatively similar. If you're trying to press the base down with your thumb, and you might have longer nails, you can use something like the end of a Sharpie or just something that's curved at the end and actually just press the clay out that way, just so that you're able to make the base a bit thinner around the inside edges. So always utilize different things that you can find in the house. You can literally use anything that wipes clean afterwards, you can totally use. This is going to be my cute little water pot. So any cracks that appear, depending on how wet your clay is, you might not get cracks, but I've just got a couple little ones there. I'm just smoothing them over with my finger. And it's always good as well to compress the top. When it's something this small, you can just use your finger and your thumb instead of a sponge. You can use a sponge on bigger items, but sometimes it's fine just on smaller pots like this to just go around the edge and just kind of even out the top surface. All I'm doing is working around. I'm just putting a little bit of pressure down onto the top of my lip of my pot there with my thumb and finger like this. And all this does is it compresses the top, so it means it's less likely to crack as it's drying, and it can just give you a slightly neater finish on the top there as well. I'm not going to smooth out all of the pinch marks around the outside, the indentations where my fingers would press into the clay, because I think it looks cute with a bit of texture. Just smoothing over the inside. Here's my little pot. With the palette and with your pot as well, you can actually go in and you can use the needle tool if you want, or anything with texture. I feel like I'm going to sneeze, wait. I'm gonna sneeze. Look into the light. No. No, it's gone. No, it's gone back in. Okay. So, with your pot and with your palette as well, because you have a little bit of space around the outside of the palette here, the little border. If you wanted to, you could indent different household objects that you can find. You can use the tools, and you can actually press a pattern into the side. I've gone for quite a simple design with my palette and my little pot, but you can carve into these, you can make indentations, you can press patterns into them, and you can also paint them. Either if it's air dry clay, you can paint with acrylic before you varnish it, or with these guys, because these are going in the kiln, you can actually paint onto these with underglaze as well, and that will give your pieces a little bit more character. Or if you're making this as a gift for someone, you could perhaps paint something on there like their name or something that refers to them, something that is relevant to them if it's a gift, for example. And now with the last bit of clay, I'm just going to make, and again that's probably too big, I'm actually just going to make a little paintbrush holder so that when I'm painting and if I'm just letting a layer dry or something, I want to place my paintbrush down, I have something to place my brush down onto. I'm just moulding a little sausage of clay. You can make this as big as you want, but obviously for the function of holding a couple of paintbrushes, it doesn't need to be huge. Smoothing over the edges as I go. You could make this into any kind of shape. This could be like a cat that's lying down. It could be, you could make a snail and do a little coil of clay here and attach it. I'm just keeping this all relatively basic just to show you how to make the actual forms. But you could really go all out with this, go crazy with your imagination. I've rolled out my little piece there. I've just smoothed off the edges. And I'm just going to use the handle of a paintbrush. This is a slightly thicker paintbrush. And I'm just going to press into the top. I'm just pressing into the top there. If your paintbrush sticks, like mine just did, when you press down, if you rotate the brush slightly, it's easier to actually take the brush out. And I'm just going to do that twice. And then just smooth over with my finger. I was going to make this as a gift for someone, but I might just keep it for myself. I'll make them another one. This is what you're left with. Just a little piece that has 2 indentations in there, just nice and smooth in the top, and that's for your paintbrushes to rest in, like so. Ta-da! And this is very plain as well, so imagine how cute it would be if you put some, you know what, I'm gonna put a smiley face on there. All I'm doing is making a little ball of clay that I'm gonna press on one end here. I'm gonna blame this on the fact that it's not even 7:30 in the morning, but I've not put my indentations exactly in the middle there. So just to make it look like I did that on purpose, I'm just going to put a little face on this one end I'm just going to squash them a little bit. If you find your clay is dry and it's cracking when you're pressing into it or trying to force it into different shapes, don't worry about it, just add a little bit of water as I'm doing. It's still totally good clay. I'm just making a small little disc here to make a little face, because I like to put smiley faces on everything. I'm going to score it with my needle tool, and I'm going to score the back of what my smiley face is going to be. Just going to add a tiny bit of slip there to each side, so always put a bit of slip or water, preferably slip. If you can use slip to join things, it does work as a better glue than just adding water, but sometimes water's enough. But always apply to both sides of the area that you're going to push together. I'm just going to add that on there. Give it a little squeeze or try and rotate it a tiny bit. You know, if you try and turn it and it's not moving, you know that that's stuck on real good. Just a little bit of water on my brush there, and I'm just getting some of the excess water off. And I'm just going around the edge of that join just to neaten up, because sometimes the slip will just kind of squeeze out, and it's good to just blend it around with the brush. It's amazing how going over something with a brush can make it a lot more finished. This actually looks like a Popeye, so that was not my intention. But when I put the face on there, all will become clear. And I'm literally just going to use a pin tool just to pop a little face on there. So poking in the two eyes. So there you have it. I have my little water pot for the side of my palette. I have my palette here. I'm going to glaze it so it will look a bit fancier when it's finished. And my little cute paintbrush holder that's going to put me in a good mood every time I look at it, because look at his little face. I hope you enjoyed making this fun little project, and don't forget to tag us in the pictures, or if you're too shy to put your work on social media, feel free to just message them across. We're always interested to see what you guys make, and I'll see you in the next video. Bye!